Great. Good to see everyone. Welcome to our practice period today. Today, I'm going to do a Dharma talk on the second ox herding picture. So we're at the beginning of our third week of Ango, which is our 90-day intensive practice period, and we're really starting to cook. We've got a lot of things going on, and it really builds. You know, it's really, really great. I've seen many of you at one or more of our practice periods over the last 2 weeks, and I just love this time. I just find that just throw myself into each one, and then the next one comes up, and I throw myself into that. And you know, I don't have any idea about it being good or bad, or me getting anything out of it or not getting anything out of it. You know, there's always going to be another one the next day or 2 or 3 days later. And just roll on, and it's a wonderful way to practice. Just do something every day. So during this period, I'm giving a series of lectures or Dharma talks on what's called the ox herding pictures, and in Zen, they actually go back to the 12th century, or even before that. But in the form that we're looking at them, goes back to the 12th centuries, and it's a series of just very simple pictures and poetic verses that talk about the stages that we go through in a spiritual path. So it's based on the metaphor that this ox, a bull, cow, choose the animal of your choice, actually, represents our true self, okay? And at the beginning, we're sort of alienated from our true self. We're not familiar with it, right? So at the beginning, we're searching for it. We realize that there's something wrong, you know, with our life, there's something, we're confused, we're disconnected, we're depressed, our minds are overactive, all the things we talked about at the beginning. And so we say, there's something within me that I can deal with this, that can help me deal with this, because my mind and body aren't functioning harmoniously. Okay, you recognize that. So you set off on this search for something. The setting off on the search was the first ox herding picture, and now we're at the second ox herding picture, which is seeing the footprints of the ox. The verse goes like this: along the riverbank, under the trees, I discovered traces. Leaving behind the fragrant grasses, I study the subtle signs. The tracks, suddenly clear as the distant sky, lead me into the endless mountains. There is no place to hide. All right, I've taken the liberty of folding in a variety of translations. I like different translations of different lines on this, so this is kind of my combination of ones I like. So the first picture we talked about last week, which was seeking the ox, where you realize the emotional tone quality of that place was desperate, confused, lost. Okay, that's kind of how we start out on a spiritual quest. The one here is quite different, right? Oh, I see the traces of something. It's almost dramatic. Aha! I see it. I know where to go. I see the path now. Okay, before it was wandering. You didn't even know which direction to go in. Okay, but now you see something, it's like, that's the place to go. It's almost adventurous. There's an adventuresomeness to it. And then also you're feeling very exposed. The last line in this verse is, there is no place to hide. Right? So I'm going to say, for those of you here for the introduction, this may be right where you're at in your life. Okay, because the traces here it's a teaching, or it's a tradition, or it's a teacher. Okay, it's something that you recognize, and it's like, oh, this is it. This is the path. Okay, this is addressing the confusion that I've been feeling, the discomfort. then you see it and you look at it and you study the subtle signs. That's the line in the verse. Okay, so what is that? Oh, wait a second. Oh boy, this looks like, yeah, I see this ox is big. Yeah, this is definitely an ox. You know, you really look at it and you say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. So you might feel that, you know, those of you who came here today for the first time, you might have had some notion. You obviously had some notion that a meditation session or a Zen session, you know, was going to offer you something that might help you with what you're facing right now in your life, and hopefully, you know, you've come here and what you've heard so far and the practice, you know, you're like, oh yeah, this actually addresses what brought me here, you know. So the tracks are visible to you. So there's a couple things that you kind of need to do in order to see the tracks. Right? You have to give up your distractions. And you have to concentrate on the tracks. So there's so many distractions in our life, and we're pulled so many ways. You know, even when we're suffering and we deal with that situation, but we're also ambitious and we want to, you know, draw something to ourselves, or we want to grow in our career. So there's so many, you know, there's so many things that are pulling at our attention, and some of those are deep callings, and some of them are superficial callings. And all of us are very, you know, very familiar, I'm sure, with just being pulled to the superficial stuff. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's got a Facebook account, right? We're all very familiar with being pulled to the superficial, right? And you can live your whole life that way, you know, just being distracted and being pulled in ways that really aren't feeding your soul, aren't feeding your primary condition. So you have to make a commitment to say, you know, I'm really ready to not put my energy into chasing those things and really apply it to this path. Right? And then the second thing is the concentration. Right? Now you have to really look at the subtle signs. So really study, really look at the path that's presenting itself to you. Look at yourself and your own commitment, your own capacity. You know, how important it is to you, and move forward. You know, even spiritual paths can become sort of like that if you're not really serious about them. Here we are in Boulder. You know, I've lived in Boulder a long time, and I've crossed paths with many practitioners and sort of wannabe practitioners. You know, it's kind of a spiritual marketplace in a lot of ways. Yeah, I see smiles for that one, right? Right. So you know, you can be dilettantish. We can be dilettantish even in our spiritual practice. So it's like, okay, well, there's that one might give me something. There's that one, and that one might give me something. So really, you know, in a sense, you've just allowed yourself to become distracted with a superficial level of spiritual development, right? And you know, I explored a few different paths before I realized that Zen, you know, was my path, and that I recommend actually doing that. I definitely recommend doing that. But what I don't recommend is doing that for 20 years. You know, and that happens, you know, bopping around, because what happens, and it happens a lot, is you come up to a difficult place in the path that you've chosen, and then you say, oh well, it's the path's issue, it's not mine. Right? And then you go to one, and then the first few months or maybe years of that one are really great. You meet new people, you've got a new teacher who's like really, you know, doing it for you. And the practices seem to be working. And then you come up to a tough spot in that one. And it's like, oh, this isn't the one. No, it's this other one. Okay. So really scrutinize the tracks, okay? You've got a path that's presented to you, really be serious about your investigation of the path. So these tracks, allow us to embark upon this development path where we develop our faith, our doubt, and our determination, these three aspects of any spiritual path. Now that you see the tracks, it's like, okay, here's a path where that I can follow. I'm going this way, right? Along that path, we develop what we call these three fundamentals of a practice: faith, doubt, and determination. So the faith means, okay, yeah, this is it. The bowl is this way. I know if I keep going here, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna master it, and I'm gonna be it. All right, I've got that. But then you go through moments where you're like, well, what is this? What is this bowl? Where am I? What is this? What's going on? Is this really the bowl? Okay, maybe moments of self-doubt, but also moments of questioning, like, what really is this all about? Right? The questioning is a fundamental part of this path too. And then the effort and the determination is the third part too. And that means just, okay, one step after the other, follow the path. However faithful you're feeling, or however confident you're feeling, however doubtful you're feeling, or questioning or uncertain you're feeling, put one step in front of the other. You've got the path in front of you. And that's what a tradition gives you. All right. And teachers and the lineage and the seniors in the group. Okay, you don't know what to do? Here's what you do. Practice this way. Right? It's really great. It's really great. Just do this. This is a tried and true path. When you do that, your faith, your doubt, your determination all increase. And then that power that I talked about before, that joriki, that power of concentration, that develops as well. It develops in your body and in your mind together, and you've been able to do amazing things with that. You start to notice things that you didn't notice before in your life. When you see the tracks and now you know a place to go. Before you're like, oh my God, I'm afraid, I don't know where I'm going. You're so lost in confusion. But now that your path has become clarified by saying this is the way to go, now all the energy goes into a real sensitive discernment of what's going on the inside and the outside. And with that scrutiny that you're bringing, you gain insight. You really start to penetrate into a deep understanding of what's going on within you and within the world. You start to have sensitive emotional hits from other people where you understand deeply what's going on with them in a way that you didn't before. You can see a group and you can read the energy of the group and you can see kind of what's going on in the flows. You can look out, you could read the news and see what's going on, and you can see the way, the three poisons, greed, anger, and ignorance, are kind of driving vast collectives of people to do what they do. And you can see that because you can see it within yourself. Oh, bunch of humans just like me, confused, angry, upset, greedy, averse, hostile, just like me. Oh, that makes sense. It isn't pretty all the time, but it's real. So before you see the bull, which is the next stage we'll talk about next week, before you see, there could be there could be some confusion and some doubt that kicks in. It's like you have confidence in this path that it's the right path, but you haven't really quite glimpsed, your true nature fully. And so doubts and confusion can come in during this period. Just be aware of that and keep going. But this is a time where you can abandon the path if you haven't seen it yet. Okay, and this can last for weeks or months or even years, where you don't have a really convincing experience of your true self, which is that self deeper than your egoic identifications, deeper than your personality, your me story. Okay? It's likely that you will have a glimpse of that early in your practice, very much so. Who are you when you're not thinking? It's not you. Understood as, insert name here, John or Betty, or, it's not that story. So you will touch into that. But until you have a convincing experience of it, you may question where it's going. So you need patience as your confidence builds, and that's required here. I want to share this one more dimension of this stage, and this comes from Trungpa Rinpoche. So I said earlier I was going to share something about that. And Trungpa Rinpoche, as most of you know, is a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner who then adapted Tibetan Buddhism to Western kind of understandings and mores. And he called that Shambhala. So that's the Shambhala practice. And he was very, very into Zen. He loved Zen. He was close friends with Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. And also he was friends, not quite as good friend with Maizuni Roshi, who was my first teacher. So it was very consonant with the practices. He loved it very much. So he actually did his own series of commentaries on the Oxfording picture, which are a Zen expression. And I wanted to share his expression. I think through the course of my Dharma talks, I'll share his commentaries maybe every week, maybe occasional weeks. But this is his commentary on the second stage. By understanding the origin, you find the possibility of transcending this pain. This is the pain that we experience in the first stage, where we're lost and confused. And this understanding is the perception of the Four Noble Truths. You see that pain results from the conflicts created by ego, and you discover the footprints of the bull, which are the heavy marks of ego in all play of events. You are inspired by unmistakable and logical conclusions rather than by blind faith. This corresponds to the Shravakayana, liberation through listening, and Pratyekya Buddhayana, solitary awakening paths. Okay, I just said that last line just because we have a Vajrayana practitioner who might connect with those terms, but I don't want us to get distracted by those. But what I do want to point out is how he says the footprints are the heavy mark of the ego in all play of events. It's kind of an interesting way to formulate that. It's like, I thought the tracks of the bull were, a practice lineage, a teacher, a teaching, a center, something like that, which puts on the way. But actually, what really is your primary teacher is when you see how your ego is creating your own suffering. That's the primary insight, which is what the Four Noble Truths document, right? We experience life as insufficiency. The cause of that is that we're constantly craving something or pushing it away. Okay, and then there's a way beyond that, right? Self-created suffering. It's the Four Noble Truths. And when we really see that, that becomes our first teacher that points us the way towards how to take care of it. Your life is your teacher. The place of your practice is where your ego is functioning within your life. The way to discover true self is to look at how small self operates. Or, as Dogen put it, to study Buddhism is to study the self. Look closely and clearly how egoic consciousness is functioning, something happens.